You are listening to That's What I Call Marketing with your host, Connor Byrne.
Welcome to That's What I Call Marketing, the podcast where you will hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique insights. Don't forget to rate or review this episode wherever you are listening or watching, as it really helps us build on this amazing community of engaged marketers just like you. And if you are interested in getting involved with That's What I Call Marketing, our sponsorship kit is now available on our website. That's what I call marketing.com/sponsor. And we are looking for you to come aboard with us around our Cannes content. So if you would like your agency or brand to have a presence at Cannes with us, get in touch today. It's a really exciting opportunity. Well, on to today's episode. And if you told me 2 years ago I'd be speaking to professors and doctors on this podcast, I would have given you a very confused look. If you told me I would be talking to an econometrician, talking about numbers and having a great laugh, I would have given you an equally confused gaze. But here I am today talking to the fantastic Dr. Grace Kite and having a blast making magic with numbers. Grace is a remarkable figure whose journey of bringing some joy to economics in marketing has been a game changer. We chat about that path and how Grace's curiosity really got her into marketing. We talk about the importance of people, how getting the work used and not just commissioned is so important for her, how bar charts are the bazooka of data, the importance of last click attribution going away and the challenges we face with that and retail media, the differences for smaller and bigger brands, how 30 grand spent today can give you 20 to 40% more effective marketing plans. Of course, we touch on AI, Die Hard's place as a Christmas classic, and we catch up on Grace's new offering, which is even more accessible. So stay tuned to hear about her magic training. The show's going to start after a quick word from our sponsors.
Today's show is supported by the Indie List, the leader in providing you with easy access to hundreds of highly experienced marketers quickly and cost effectively. Visit theindielist.ie to speak to the Indie List team today.
Are you facing the maze of global expansion? Diplomat introduces the diplomacy model, a cost-effective, innovative approach to navigating the complexities of your brand's presence in international markets. Visit diplomat.agency.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.
Grace, thanks a million for joining me on That's What I Call Marketing.
Absolutely my pleasure. It's a joy to be here with you.
I've been dying to chat to you and do this podcast with you, and so much to ask you. So we get through as much as we can. But listen, I want to kind of almost start at the start. And economics and marketing are not necessarily natural, like career paths that would go together in a sense. So, like you did economics. How did the move into marketing kind of come about? Was that a passion as well?
Do you know, it's funny because I think people sometimes misunderstand what like economics really is. Sometimes it's, it is about how unemployment happens and interest rates and exchange rates and all these kind of financial things and how they move. But actually economics in itself is more of a toolkit, in that it's a way of thinking about the world and a way of analysing things and a way of bringing data to bear on different questions. And marketing is absolutely something that toolkit can be used for.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of one of those people that is a bit nosy. I'm a bit nosy. There's a lot of us in marketing like that. We're just nosy about how people think. Like, you know, the sort of people that if you walk down the street and the curtain's open, you'll have a look because you think, oh, what are normal people doing today? There's a lot of people who got into marketing because of that, and I'm like that as well. But my way into it is looking in through people's windows, but also what patterns do they make in data, and what things can you see if you look at people or a lot of people in one go through a spreadsheet or a database or something like that. And that's kind of my nosiness, and economics allows you to do that with that toolkit using data.
But was there a moment where you're kind of like, I can see how this is going to be useful in a marketing context? Like, do you know what I mean? That like when you're studying economics, you're like, oh, like I can see the route there versus going to work in, a bank.
do you know, a lot of people who study economics go and work in a bank because that's the highest paid career path if you study economics, right? Go and work in an investment bank, and I've got a mate who I used to help with his maths at uni who like works for Morgan Stanley doing mergers and acquisitions, and he's so minted. He's got a flat that looks out over St Paul's Cathedral, and he's like living the dream.
So minted.
So minted. But I can't get excited about that in the same way as I'm excited about why do people, if prices go up, sometimes still pay the extra price and sometimes not? Why do people do that? Like, when and how? And if you wanted them to do that, what could you do to get them there? Those kind of questions are much more interesting to me than which security should we buy on the stock exchange today, and if we trade it tomorrow versus next month, which would we make more money?
Not your bag.
Not my bag. not even for all the bags of money.
You worked in agencies, and then was it about 14 years ago you went out on your own? What prompted that kind of moment of, I'm going to do this for myself? Brave move, like.
Yeah, I'll tell you my story because I think it's interesting in terms of a reaction to a certain situation that lots of people find themselves in, which took me on a different route to where many other people go, and what it was I had children. I had my daughter Meg, and when I was pregnant with her, I knew that there's no way I could do 5 days a week in the office in central London with the commute that comes with it, and all the kind of stress and pressures that come with agency life. And for that reason, I had to make a change. And the change I decided to make was to go freelance. And that enabled me. I was very lucky because of the background that I had, and because the type of analysis that I made my specialism was always in demand. I was able to do that, and I had good networks, so I could say to people, I could work with you, but on this freelance basis, and I was able to do it for 3 days a week. And that gave me control over my life at a time when I needed it, because I needed to be able to look after my children and also, pay the bills and all of that good stuff. And that was the genesis of it. That was where it all began. And it's something that many women find themselves in that situation. And I was very lucky to be able to, parlay it into something that actually then grew into what's now a fantastic business. But many other women find that they put their careers on the shelf a little bit at that time, and their careers stop.
Which, like, we could talk about that for the rest of the episode, because it's a shocking thing. My wife, again, she took the career pauses because, like, the option, like parental leave or parents leave, isn't there, and she's much smarter than I am, and it did have an impact. It drives me nuts, so I'm not going to spend the next 45 minutes or 50 minutes talking about that, but I just think it's insane. Like, the fact you say women have to or had to, do you know what I mean? Like, it's bizarre, isn't it?
I just don't think any parents should have to make a decision between parenting and career. I think both men and women should be able to do both things, and they should be able to kind of dial up. I used to be a DJ, so I think of like crossfaders, or like the kind of just kind of in a little bit less or a little bit more up and down, and have a mix that works for you and your family, regardless of your gender. And that I think it's so important that not only women are able to do that, but also men are able to do it. So that there can be a sharing of it, and the children can have their dads. I mean, that's important too. So anyway, I could get on a soapbox about this, but so I was freelancing, and then I ended up getting clients, and then I was like, I can't do this all on my own. So I brought somebody else in, and over time that's just grown and grown, and now there's 25 lovely magic people. And wow, we're growing really quickly, and it's a fantastic business that brings me joy. Actually, they're lovely people to work with.
That's amazing. And so, real quickly, DJ, what kind of DJing
I used to do house, and then I used to do drum and bass in the late 90s and noughties. And
Amazing.
I played at Heaven, and I played at Aquarium and a few places like that. And my DJ name was Gracious.
Oh, right. We're gonna have to look that up, because I was wondering, with the name of the agency Magic Numbers, obviously it's a brilliant name, or the company, and I was like, was she a fan of the band?
We do listen to them. We do listen to them. You know, we have to actually buy search engine ads so that we can actually appear on the first page because of them. But we decided we didn't mind. We think they're sort of quite cool to rub shoulders with on the search page.
Yeah, exactly. I know a couple of years ago you did some positioning work. Am I right? Was that with Tom? You do with Tom Roach? Am I right? Yeah. Okay.
That's right.
Great. What prompted that at that moment? Like, why did you feel that was the time that you needed to kind of get that work done?
It's how can I say? Like, it was in 2020. You remember 2020 when it was COVID and it was hot and there wasn't that much work around. Everything went quiet, and at that time, I had got to the point where the business wasn't just me anymore, and there were 2 or 3 other people there, and the business was named after me. It was named after me personally at that point, and it just no longer felt right that it was named out after me personally, because there were these other people involved. And equally, with COVID, one of our big clients around that same time pulled what they were doing with us, just because of the pandemic and ramifications of that. And there came a moment where it was important to really go out and have new leads, and I wanted to get the house in order so that if I was going out trying to do things and trying to put messages out there, I was being very clear about what those messages were, and not kind of scattergun, or not having too many different things that we were saying about what this business was about. And I was very lucky to be able to work with Tom at that time.
Yeah, and I've heard you say that kind of positioning gave you clarity on the offering, and even saying no to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was it about that kind of, like, was it the sitting down and kind of going, actually, this is who we are, you know, almost kind of all that kind of brand essence, for want of a better word?
I think it wasn't just sitting down and navel gazing. We did market research. I commissioned somebody to do interviews with CMOs who had econometrics and market mix modeling and various types of analytics in their time. And I asked, the question I posed in the market research was, what is it that really gets analytics work used and put into practice? Because I'd seen in my career many times when a good bit of analysis had been done, and then the client hadn't been able to act on it, or hadn't acted on it, and it sat on the shelf. And it had always been a puzzle to me throughout my career. Like, why does that happen? I just never really quite understood it. And it made me a bit cross, because people had like put effort into it, and these smart analytics people tried their best, and like it just didn't get used, and then there was no improvement in the marketing plan as a result of it. And I thought, what the hell? So I commissioned the market research to answer that question. And as well, we asked a few things like, you know, what other advice would you give, and blah, blah, blah. And so we got all these interviews, and we did, like, really went geeky about it, did textual analysis and word clouds and all that, you know, shenanigans. And from that, we had a real picture of what people wanted, and what was it that gets progress as a result of analytics. And the thing that came out of it just so clearly, when you ask that question, what gets analytics work used, is that it's not actually about the analytics itself, it's about the people. People have to accept it, they have to believe it, they have to, you know, be confident enough in it to act on it. There's always a committee decision that has to be made to act on analytics findings, and that committee all needs to be brought in, and they need to agree in person. And so there's this whole kind of organisational change and people issue about how organisations and marketing departments can absorb analytics findings. that was where we really wanted to help, because we just wanted our clients to kind of do really good marketing and win awards and like sell loads of whatever it is they sell. And so that was really the heart of it. We also did a bit of kind of, what is it that we can offer? Can we actually legitimately tackle that? Can we actually offer that? And what are competitors doing? Is this something that competitors already do or don't do? And spoiler, they don't. They really don't. They make clients feel stupid rather than making them feel they can get on with it. So it came together around that, and that was the lovely piece that Tom did, and we've nailed our colours to that mast ever since. Everybody that we've hired, client projects that we've done, the way we talk to clients when we meet them, and the way we work with them throughout projects.
So isn't it wonderful when you kind of get an insight like that? Do you know what I mean? You're kind of going, oh, there it is. Like that's the thing. And so what then did you change? Because I've heard you talk a lot about the importance of people, and it's a very interesting, because econometrics feels like it's data and heavy, but you're very much around the people. And so how have you approached that, and how have you changed maybe your approach about people in organizations?
So, I mean, one thing is, do you ever do that Myers-Briggs thing?
Oh, I'm sure. I think I have a long time.
I mean, everyone's had a go at it every once in a while, haven't they? And I recently did it with my team, right? And bear in mind, my team are all econometricians, right? They've all got economics degrees. They're all like kind of spend their days in spreadsheets and coding. And we did this Myers-Briggs things, and it gives you 4 letters. And the first letter is introvert versus extrovert, I versus E. And introvert is where you get your energy from sort of being on your own, kind of working stuff out. And extrovert is where you get your energy from working with other people, and that's the bit that gives you your kind of fizz, I guess. And I've done this before in analytics teams, and you just find they're nearly all I's. They're nearly all the introverts, because realistically what we do is sort of sitting away, nerding away on kind of, numbers and coming up with answers on it. And actually, my team is nearly all E's. There is a lot of E's.
Really?
And I think 6 of us. I'm an I, but a lot of the others are E's. And so there's 6 out of 25 of us are I's. And that's the team that I've hired and put together because of the positioning I was just talking to you about.
Wow, that's it's fascinating then that you're an I, because you're quite a public face, obviously, of the business. You speak at things, you do things like this. I've seen you've been on a load of podcasts recently, and I'm like, is there a forcing? Are you like 10 minutes before this going, right, come on, Grace?
I mean, everybody's degrees, right, of different things. And I mean, the thing that I really love about doing this kind of thing, and again, the writing and posts and things that I do, it probably started with writing and posts rather than webinars and podcasts because of the I. But also there's what I love is I've done so many analytics and evaluation projects over my career that I can see patterns across them. And the introvert in me has studied those patterns and then thinks they're amazing. And I've done that separately. And because they're so cool, I just want to share them and let people kind of learn from it. And that's kind of why I do these kind of things.
Right. Yeah. And then I'm working then with clients, how important then is that people piece there in terms of like them getting the importance of the people over the data? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How are you going in and kind of going, actually, we're not going to work with these people because they're just data and they're not going to get the people piece?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. And there are some clients who don't want to talk about it. They just want the numbers crunched, and they just want a report that says here's some numbers. Once a quarter, once a month, or whatever, and they're not our favorite type of clients. And even when we do have clients that are like that, we go, hang on a minute, but what are you talking about in all your meetings this month? Wouldn't you want to have some numbers on that? And wouldn't you want this thing to evolve with you so that it's responsive to what you need? So that, and we, so that's one aspect of it. I guess the other aspect of it is that we do certain things in our projects that are more people friendly than we've seen others in our industry do. So we spend a lot of time in discovery at the beginning, and we interview stakeholders, and we do that. It's probably quite an extensive thing. We get people tell us, partly because we're independent as well. It won't go back to the media agency, but people tell us, really what their issues are and what the big questions are, and who might not believe this analysis and why not. What are the things they believe, or the things that they have nailed their colours to the mast over, and those kind of biases that exist in organizations when you begin an analytics project, uncovering those at the beginning and then coming back to them at the end when you can confront them with data is something that we really, really prioritize. And that's the people aspect of it, and that's how you get to a set of things that are believed and can be acted on at the end.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because that point about nailing colours to the mast, and we've all done it, kind of big bets or beliefs or whatever. And I even knowing that going in means that if you uncover something that's a truth or something about that tactic or strategy or whatever, you're going to be able to go in and present it in a way that's not going to make that person look or feel stupid.
Yes. And that's so important, because if that person, this is the hill I'm going to die on, and you go, well, all right, maybe it should have been the next hill along. You kind of go, having enough of a relationship and knowing that person well enough that you can talk to them in advance of the big presentation of this thing, and have a discussion with them and hear their story. There's normally a really good reason why they chose that hill, right?
Yeah.
And they've probably got some research or something that looked like it was the right thing, and it turned out it wasn't quite. But it's not because they were dumb or because they were, negligent or anything. And telling that story in the organisation is so important, because if you rock up and you go, Fred just got it wrong, blah blah blah, they're more likely to believe Fred than you and the data. And actually, then no action happens. And remember, that's the thing that annoys me. So need to have action happening, right? So. But if you talk to Fred and go, oh, you thought it was this hill, but it's only because you saw this bit of evidence and you couldn't see this other part of the picture, and then you talk them through it, walk them through it, then Fred goes, I see where I was wrong. Fred sat in the meeting next to you, and then the organisation can act on it.
Yeah, you almost want Fred to be going, hey, I got this wrong and here's what I learned. Is that, that belief or kind of that just honesty, I guess.
I don't know any marketing people called Fred, by the way. It's just in case anybody's trying to find out who that is.
We're not offending anybody.
Yeah, there is no Fred.
It's like the start of what's that, Law and Order or something, this program is
fictional,
fictional. Yeah. Characters may represent. Yeah. You share loads of very helpful perspectives actually online, LinkedIn, X. It's brilliant. And actually, if people aren't following you, I'd highly recommend they do, because honestly, there's just these nuggets that you're constantly putting out there, and it's wonderful. One of the things I read that you shared that around the importance of data analytics. I'm going to read this. It was based on data from the city that showed 79% of analysts value marketing and brand. Your boss's boss's boss is a city analyst. The trouble is there's a missing link. Marketing departments and city analysts are aligned, but in between them are CEOs and boards who remain skeptical. I found that really helpful to think about it in that way. But there's the gap then between the marketing department, the city analyst, but the CEO still seeing marketing as a cost.
Yeah, I think that's it. And that piece of research is really interesting, because what the city believe about marketing in this moment in 2024 is that, because of inflation, companies have to put prices up, and you can put prices up if you've got a strong brand. City believes that completely, and the reason they believe it is because they've looked across lots and lots and lots of different companies, and they can see the ones that have survived price rises and the ones that have collapsed because of price rises, and that's the ones with the strong brand. So the value of brands in a world with inflation is very clear if you're a City analyst and you can look at lots and lots of businesses. But if you're a CEO or a CFO and you only look at your own business, or you're mainly focused on your own business, you don't have that perspective that the City's got, and that's where that's why the mismatch is there. But yeah, there can be a little gap there, and I mean, for me, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, because the way to resolve that, there's no magic wand for it. There's just individual people that have got to be taken on journeys and have got to learn and have got to kind of learn in a way that's acceptable to them.
Yeah, and I guess the evidence helps, but also, and again, you touched on it there. Inflationary times, challenging times, for want of a better word. I hate that phrase. But a lot of marketers have faced or are facing discussions with leadership around, we need to reduce, and marketers are kind of probably going, well, look, don't go dark. It's bad. It's bad when we go dark. And here's an article from the last recession. Is it the Wall Street Journal articles? It says, don't go dark during a recession. Here's the evidence. But that's not enough. And again, you were online saying that, like, there's not enough in that. What should marketers be doing currently? Because it is difficult. Budgets are tight, if not reducing. How do they have those conversations beyond the we shouldn't go dark conversation?
I mean, I think there's a way that marketers can sneak in under the I think you can sneak in a way through this, because say you've got a CFO that's like, okay, the budget's got to come down, or at least the budget can't go up in line with inflation, media inflation, because media inflation is high too. So even if you keep your budget at the same level, effectively it's getting smaller. So what you do, this is my top tip, is you say to the CFO, okay, we've got to cut something. I want to cut the right thing, therefore I need to do some evaluation. And you get some evaluation done, from Magic Numbers or others. Other econometrics agencies are available. But and then you go, which of these things that are in the budget is the least effective thing, and we'll cut that. And you go, fine, we've done that. And then, by the way, Mr. CFO, this other part over here that I think we should keep is actually doing a very strong job, and it's very important, and that's where you can start to have that evidence-led conversation with somebody that's a CFO or CEO. And I find I speak to that as part of my job to speak to C-level people about results of evaluation. They can be very, very open to it, and if the evidence is there, and if you say to them there are some things that weren't working that I agree with you, we should cut, that's where you get to be on a kind of on the right sort of level, on the right kind of discussion with them.
Yeah. And look, we get into kind of maybe more what your offering can bring, but I guess if there's people listening who are going, okay, that's great, but I can't even afford to bring in, and I think you've said before, it's around maybe 30-40 grand to get in kind of the base level of econometric modeling done. But people are like, I can't even afford that. What should they do? Are there any advice you'd give those kind of people at this stage? Kind of say, well, look, start here.
Yeah, I think you can, if you're already doing some kind of advertising that you don't want to cut, there are definitely things you can do. So you can look at different metrics that move when you're on air, and you can see if those then correlate with your sales. So the work that Lesbianet did on share of search is an example of that. So that's one that's actually quite useful to use, even if you don't have any tracking metrics. And there are a range of other ones that are like that. And we've looked at a lot of kind of e-commerce businesses, for example, and analysed what happens on their websites. And so one of the things that can be really correlated with sales in the longer term, so your brand building, the thing you don't want to go dark from, is people dwell time on the homepage. So if you've got a homepage that tells the story of this business and people read it, that is evidence that you've brought in people who are kind of a bit into the brand, and that can be just an indicator of whether your brand building is working. And there are a range of things like that. So I would recommend what you do is you find a lot of things that seem to be pointing in the right direction. Maybe a pre and post dip from the campaign, maybe a share of search is moving, maybe people are reading the homepage, and you put all of those things onto a page, because whoever you are at a senior level, you get used to seeing lots and lots of different research and bits of evidence and data coming in. And what's convincing to a really senior person is if those all seem to point in the same direction. So if you can find a few things that point in the same direction, that'll help.
Yeah, and probably actually, being honest, not trying to market the marketing in the sense of, actually saying, actually these things probably aren't working, or we're willing to take a bet that if we pause these, they won't have the as bad an impact, because there are decisions to be made, and you have to probably stop some things, at some point. Of course, the other thing people can do is they can't afford econometric modeling just yet. Taking the course that you are offering is a great way, and a lower cost entry to start understanding some of the things that you can do.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after these.
Today's show is brought to you by the Indie List CMO Collective. This service from the Indie List provides you with access to a curated range of highly experienced and talented senior marketing specialists. Visit theindielist.ie to find out more.
Are you facing the maze of global expansion? Diplomat introduces the diplomacy model, a cost-effective, innovative approach to navigating the complexities of your brand's presence in international markets. Visit diplomat.agency.
And our training's really practical. So some of the things I was just talking to you about then, about what you would do if you didn't have evaluation but you needed to make a case for brand building, that is very much what's in our Scaling Up Works course. It's loads and loads of practical frameworks, bits of things you can do with your own data for free, and lots of benchmarks and case studies, modern case studies, things other people have done that have worked. And we think our training fits into the training landscape. If you want the theory, go to Mark Ritson, right? Or if you want the theory on ad effectiveness, go to James Herman. He's got a really good theoretical course on it. But if you're like actually at the coalface and you're like, oh, I've seen the theory, but now I've got to apply it, and I've got someone here who's a bit skeptical that theory can just be wedged into our business, that's when our courses come in, because it just helps you contextualize and get it working for your business. So we've got the Scaling Up Works course, which is the one I was just talking about, and then Data Works is all about just how to use marketing data well and how not to be misled by it and how to communicate it properly.
Yeah. Also, some stuff you shared, which is so helpful, is just examples of good charts.
Yeah.
And as a podcast, it's hard to, we can't show them, although there is video people can watch. But again, it's amazing how people can get that so wrong, because it's a case of we have all this data and we're going to put it all on a chart to show this.
There is actually a whole podcast. There's a BBC podcast with Hannah Fry, who I really rate. She's a mathematician, and she's got a podcast about charts. I can't see how that would work, right? But it does. But she describes these charts on the podcast. I don't know how she does it, but she's amazing. Podcasting legend. But yeah, and that's about the content of charts and kind of useful things that you can learn from them. But there's a whole nother level on it, which is just about how to make them in a way people can absorb and take and use. And a lot of it is what you take out of charts that makes them easier and simpler. So you just declutter massively. You make sure that the ink on the page really counts. So it should only be there if it's really, really helping. And you kind of write on the chart what you want people to see, like what's the takeout, write that as the title. So instead of going, this is a chart of return on investment by year, you write return on investment's been improving since the new campaign. it's a simple it's a way of using charts as a communication device rather than just a kind of splurge of data.
Yeah. You said bar charts are the bazooka of data communication. I love that. It's like, that's brilliant, because people kind of go, "Oh no, bar chart," but it's, again, and you have like a wonderful visual online which actually shows before and after, so it's brilliant. I highly recommend people take a look at that. I want to just talk a bit about kind of, obviously, econometrics helps measure return on investment. Peter Field, when I was talking to him, he said that ROI can be a really unhelpful metric and it can be a slippery slope. Now, I don't think he was talking about econometrics, but he was more about the potential misattribution of more measurable channels. And you've talked about it and said that if you still use attribution to decide how you allocate budget across channels, make 2024 the year that you stop.
Yeah.
So and in fairness, you said the problem is that once you start using it, it becomes sticky and it becomes hard to almost wean yourself off it. So if someone is using attribution now, like what are the steps they should be taking to wean off it, and then what should they be looking to do?
I mean, this is a really, really serious issue, and I'm not a kind of change the world crusader kind of person, really, but this is something that I think the world needs. We really need to change the world on this. 65% of marketing people are still using last click attribution to decide how to spend their marketing budget. That's like a majority using something that is very, very misleading, and it's misleading in a particular way, because that last click attribution, all it can see is the last click that took place before the sale. So it can only see things that are right at the bottom of the funnel. So it can only see things like search. Retail media is another one that happens just before the sale. And what it does is it says, hey, search and retail media, they're the only things I can see. I can see those in sales. They must be causing the sales. They're fantastic. And if you believe that and you spend your budget like that, you end up spending way too much putting ads in front of people who are going to buy anyway, because they're already in the last little bit of their journey, and they decided that earlier on in their purchase journey. And it's just such a waste. And we see, not all clients are like this, but we see a lot of advertisers that are massively over invested in search because of it, and it's a huge dead weight loss to marketing people. We could have been spending that on something better that was generating new demand, and it's a problem. It's a big problem. It needs to be sorted. So you kind of just have to break the apron string and move away from it.
And a lot of brands, companies, when they start out, are using digital because it's cheaper, it's easier to track, and also you are probably, particularly in an early life cycle, you are looking to capture that demand that is current, right? Because that's how you're going to start to at least grow the business. So they're starting at a place where they have that in place and it is demonstrating a return. So that, but how do you move off that? How do you kind of make the case to say, actually, that was then, to get to the next stage, we need to think about other things? Like, what's the conversation?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because it is a conversation, and quite often what happens when I've seen in organisations is that it's a change of personnel as well, because somebody so you're right when you say that it's a useful thing to do when you're very young company, because you can see you switch this on and things get better, and that lines up with what the attribution shows. But as you get bigger and you get more well known, more and more of the action is happening further up the purchase funnel, and at that point there is a time to change, and there are some things that you will be buying in your search or lower funnel strategy that you don't actually need anymore. And in our courses, and we do this with clients as well, we set out a way to do a targeted, gentle test and learn to find out which bits you can switch off, and it saves people a lot of money. So the ROI of our courses is fantastic just because of that. But that's kind of what you have to do. But that's the sort of mechanics of getting yourself out of this situation. But there is also a people side of it, which is really, really important, because probably whoever was there in the beginning and switched this stuff on has been really successful to get you to this bigger stage. And they have nailed their colours to this mast. Like, they've said, this is how you do marketing, and this is how they've done it through their whole career. And then to go, well, actually, no, it is something different that we need now, is a problem, and it's difficult for people in their careers. And sometimes it is a change of personnel that allows it to really be unlocked, which is sad in a way. And I'd like to change that. I'd like it to, things like this to come out, and for that person to go, hey, we've got to this stage where it's time to do something different. That's because I've been so successful. We're ready for level 2, and I'm going to lead us on to level 2. But actually, a lot of marketers don't feel that way. They feel like, oh no, this thing that I've always said is brilliant isn't working. I can't admit that. So there's I'd like there to be the education piece there.
I find it fascinating that marketers do it, but like strongly held beliefs, so strongly held that you can't change and adapt. Because like, look, if we all knew, we should be all writing books, and we should all be doing world tours explaining to people how marketing works, because we've nailed it, So it's fascinating that people, I'd encourage people not to have those strong views. Like, have a view and then open yourself up to being wrong, or needing to evolve as the business. Because you say then the risk is you have to leave the business because you're not able to take it to level 2 in the game, and that's a shame, because you
even
lose
though it was your win. You got to level 2. It's and I think that's, just to go really meta for a moment, I think that's one of the discussion about effectiveness lacks depth for me in some places, because we go, the answer is 60-40, and I'm not picking on Les and Peter because they're brilliant, but the answer is 60-40, or the answer is this and that. But actually, it is different depending on your context and your life stage, and how successful you've been so far, and what your competitors are doing, and everything else. And how it depends on life stage is something I'm really, really interested in, because I think it does allow you to go, well, now we've reached the next life stage, we're going to do something different, and to own that and live in the success of it, and then change.
Yeah. Look, I don't think Les and Peter would say it's 64. Do you know what I mean? Like, they use that and they're like, oh God, it's just
they're just misquoted that way, aren't they? They're kind of misquoted that way.
Yeah.
No, they don't think that
way. Exactly. I think Azim McGrath said to me, like, there's a page 2 in The Long and Short of it. People got stuck on page 1.
Yeah.
So true. And I think wonderful examples as well. Like, you had a brilliant example about mattresses during lockdown. I thought this was a great example of actually demonstrating that. Can you give me that example? I think people would enjoy hearing that.
So mattresses during lockdown. There was a thing, wasn't there, when we couldn't go out and we couldn't spend all our money, so we could work from home, and we were in our houses quite a lot. And at that time, people turned their focus inwardly, and many of them probably noticed that they had slightly lumpy mattresses, and a lot have bought new ones. So mattresses had a big boom during COVID, and there were some new D2C mattress providers who could do bed in box things, and you could get it delivered, and you didn't have to go to a showroom and sit on it in dreams and everything. And those guys had a fantastic COVID. They did really, really well. But what happened after COVID, when we could all go back out again, is people started spending their money on going out, and started to be a bit less focused on what was happening inside. And also, a lot of people had recently bought a new mattress, and you don't need to buy them that often. It's once every 7 years. So there was a massive dip afterwards. And that's an example of demand being brought forward for mattresses because of these external circumstances. And it's an example where actually something quite scary happened after COVID, because during COVID, the dashboards and that attribution we were talking about earlier made it look like we're really good at marketing mattresses.
Yeah.
We're really good at, really good cost per acquisition here. It's because we make good choices on our digital marketing. Actually, it was just because of COVID. And then afterwards, when the dip came, it felt like you ought to be able to solve it by changing your digital marketing. It felt like you ought to be in control, but actually you weren't. The demand just wasn't there. People stopped searching for mattresses. And that's a very, very frightening situation to be in. It's because of this feeling that you feel like you should be in control, but actually some of the things that are happening in your dashboards aren't because of you, they're because of the outside world.
Yeah, understanding that. You mentioned the 7 years. Did you ever, there was I think an Australian or a New Zealand brand of pillows that put a use by date on them?
Oh, really?
Did you ever?
No.
Isn't that genius? Because people never knew when to change their pillows. Like, it's like, well, when it's flat, they put a use by or best before. Isn't that so clever?
That's so
anyway,
clever,
that's totally random. Quickly, just on to attention metrics, and you've said that you might be surprised to hear that we haven't found any studies yet that prove attention optimized media plans are better for sales. Yes, you're not.
I'm nodding. Yeah, nodding. Thank you.
But there is evidence that attention helps recall and brand choice. So is that like where you at and kind of the use of attention metrics and the importance of it? Because it's a huge topic, right?
It's a huge topic, and I don't feel like I'm the expert on it. So if you really want to know about attention, you should ask Karen. Ask Karen Nelson-Field.
I have, yeah.
I would defer to her on anything related to attention, and equally the guys at Lumen are very smart as well. And I think what I do think about it is one thing that's really useful is to be able to know whether some of the things you're counting are bots, and actually attention is a hack, a way of getting around that. I think there are it makes sense, doesn't it? If people's eyes were on the screen more, they ought to get more out of an ad. That does make sense. It's just that the jury's out at the moment in terms of proving that it is actually important for sales for your eyes to be on the screen for more or less time. And there are some channels are more attention grabby than others, or more attention holding than others. But does it mean that you should therefore put all your eggs into the attention grabby channels or not, is a question that I don't think has been completely resolved, because you get different types of attention on different platforms, and maybe you need a mix of different attentions, and there's just an emerging science unfolding, and I think the link to outcomes and to sales hasn't been proven, and the nuances of that haven't been unpacked yet. So it isn't to critique. I said that not to critique the work that Karen and others are doing, but just to say there's an open research question here.
Yeah, and I think also that, even from talking to Karen, and she did a live event with us, and it was, incredible. But she would talk like the different types of attention and the different use cases for attention, and, passive attention. And if you've got strong brand assets, particularly audio, that's an incredible, use of passive attention that you might get in some channels. So like, I think you're completely right. It's just it's the mix. I know we're coming close to time. I wanted to ask you quickly about influencers, and you've shown influencer marketing can have a really strong return on investment, but more kind of niche influencers. I talked to Vanessa Sawyer on this podcast before, and she was all about that. She's like, niche is more important. I think it was, you get 3 times the return from an influencer with fewer followers.
Yeah, that's right. And don't you think that's fascinating? It's kind of an unintuitive thing that you might get a higher bang for your buck with a smaller influencer. But it does make sense. It's because if you're an influencer and you have a small number of followers, you care about each one of those individuals probably a little bit more. You interact with them more. You mirror their language more. You're sort of closer to them. You can respond to them more individually, and all of those things matter for how kind of trusted you are. Influence is a fantastic, fascinating new channel. I saw a survey last year which asked people who follow influencers and influencers that make product recommendations, and it asked what people thought of those product recommendations, and about 3/4 of people agreed that they trust what influencers say. They think influencers put products in their interests. They think influencers promote reliable products, and they think influencers promote good value products. 75% of people that follow an influencer that making product promotions, like, where else would you see that? You really wouldn't. Anybody who says, I think you should buy blah blah blah, you kind of don't believe it, do you?
Yeah.
But if it's an influencer, you're like, oh, okay, then yeah, all right. And that's fantastic. So the science of how to use them really, really well, and the importance of those smaller influencers that can do that trust job and build that trust job really, really well. That it's an emerging kind of way of doing brand building.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I know somebody who sells a product, and a really big influencer got their hands on the product and posted it. And I was like, oh my God, like, did your website crash? Like, was it amazing? And she's like, no, not really. We find it more when it's niche influencers that are bang on the target audience. Like, it's really, I was fascinated, because I was like, oh my God, she's probably, can't fulfill the demand now from this person that had millions of followers. As we get to the end, can I ask you really just quickly on terms of AI, and how has it affected your business in a good or a bad way, and is it something that brands can use to help them with some of the stuff we've talked about today?
So AI is really handy. We use it to speed up various processes that we've got, and I think any business that's not using it to speed up their processes and help shortcut boring stuff that people don't want to do, you've got to be nuts to not be doing that. And particularly, we talked about it earlier, the people in my team, they're very good with people. So bits of things that machines can do, just let the machine do that and put my team talking to people. Like, that's where we're at with it at Magic Numbers, and at Magic Works on the training side as well. In terms of how it can be used in marketing, I think this is really emerging, and it's really interesting. I worry about handing too much over, because at heart, what we're doing in marketing is communicating with potential customers, and they're people. Putting a machine in between the marketers and the customers is kind of disintermediating. That's a big long word, but getting in the way of that conversation we're having.
Thanks. I was going to have to look that up.
Yeah. Just getting in the way of it, and do we want that? I think is an open question. So that and aspects of it. So, for example, AI is coming up with images that can be used in posters and print ads and things. Do we really want an AI to be going back through all the recent ads and that works and going, here's one that's a bit like that, but a slight permutation, we'll throw that out there? That's speeding up the work of a junior kind of creative person, but also it's shortcutting that junior creative person's ideas and thoughts and getting in the way of that conversation between that creative person and the customer. So question mark for me, like on that one. And similarly with other things in marketing as well. I think there's a lot to learn and a way to go yet before we know.
Yeah, and I do agree. I think the human element of it, you're to get, even if you think, like, going back to the start, like when we were talking about the insights you were able to uncover through the research you did with the likes of Tom, like, I don't know, but I don't think AI would have maybe got you to that, like, human insight, and that's really, really important.
Yeah.
A couple of last things. I know you're just back from South by. How was it?
It was good. It was really fun.
Yeah, Austin's a great spot.
Yeah, I really liked it. They've got 6th Avenue in Austin. The locals call it Dirty Sixth.
Yeah.
It's got bars along both sides of it, and on the Saturday night there was a kind of go into each one of those. They each had different live music, fantastic fun. We also saw comedy and gigs and things like that, but there, a lot of talk on AI as well. So,
I thought there would be. I know econometrics can sometimes, we talked about this as well, be seen maybe as a luxury of larger brands. But you've talked about kind of entry points, kind of around 30, 40 grand. And what's interesting with that is I heard you say that first pass in econometrics can give you 20 to 40% savings or efficiencies probably, which is amazing. So like if you do the maths on it, you can figure out, well, what's my marketing budget? If I can invest 30 or 40 grand in econometrics, it gives me 20 to 4, even 20% efficiencies. It starts to work out. And I think what's really interesting for me, has been kind of that understanding of it doesn't have to be necessarily the luxury of incredibly large brands anymore.
No, it doesn't. And that's because econometrics and market mix modeling has been modernising, and the way that customers and clients keep data has been modernising too. And so the way of doing it has just got kind of easier and can be done in a more light and kind of agile way. So actually we love it when we have the first project like that for a business that's not done it before, that's maybe smallish, middling size, and they just get so much bang for their buck out of their research project because they can just improve things so much, and they go, oh, now I know, right, and they go off and we don't see them for another couple of years, and they come back and they're like, no, quite a lot bigger a business than they were before because it's now working better.
Amazing. Your courses, again, another great route for people in. They just go to Magic Numbers and they'll find the course details.
The courses are at magicworks.training.
Magicworks.training. Yeah. Okay. We'll put that in the notes. Finally, and a very important point that you have shared with the world is that Die Hard is in fact a Christmas movie, and you've the data to prove it.
And I've got the t-shirt. I've got a Nakatomi Plaza t-shirt that someone bought me for Christmas once. So that just proves it.
Yeah. Well, I got my wife one as well. Yeah. So we have that every Christmas. The kids refuse to watch it. And we're like, it's a Christmas movie.
I think the kids won't watch it because it's just so old, right? It's just not cool enough for them.
Yeah. There is a bit of that. Grace, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. As I say, I've been looking forward to it so much, and it was an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Dr. Grace Kite. As I said at the start, I really never expected to enjoy a conversation about numbers and econometrics so much, but it was fantastic. And I actually remember the first time I think I saw Grace present, I think I was listening to it, actually, was a webinar. And I went into it sort of half terrified about what I was going to be listening to. And as you can tell from today, Grace is all about making this much more accessible for everybody, but also leveling it up and having conversations with senior leaders about what she expects to find and bringing people on the journey. It was really exceptional to hear kind of how important people are to what she's doing and to her business, which is now a business of 25, 26 people. So incredible business that Grace has built, and real value that she has added to the marketing community. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us and tuning in today to That's What I Call Marketing. Until our next episode, and just a reminder, our episodes are new every single Tuesday. So do tune in every Tuesday for a new episode of That's What I Call Marketing. And if you want, you can catch up on all our previous episodes on That's What I Call Marketing.com. And of course, that's where you'll find our sponsorship kit. So get in touch, get involved. So for me, your host, Conor Byrne, until the next episode, thanks for joining me on That's What I Call Marketing.
Thanks to the Indie List for sponsoring today's show. Visit theindielist.ie to find out more.
If you would like to reach an engaged community of marketing leaders, get in touch with That's What I Call Marketing to discuss sponsorship opportunities.
Are you facing the maze of global expansion? Diplomat introduces the diplomacy model, a cost-effective, innovative approach to navigating the complexities of your brand's presence in international markets. Visit diplomat.agency